Hi everyone, my name is Emily and I'm the young adult librarian at the Rock Island Public Library, and today I have a book talk for you about a book I enjoyed this summer and I'm looking forward to getting into the second one. This is A Psalm for the Wild Bill. And in this book you meet a tea monk named Sibling Dex. They live in Panga, and Panga is the only city on this planet, or actually I believe it might be a moon, and it's the future. And the city is lovely. The city has been built in such a way that humans and nature can live side by side. This is a future in which humanity has managed to kind of come back from the brink and recognize that we can't just destroy the natural world. We're part of the natural world, and in destroying the place where we live, that would destroy our ability to continue living. So the city of Panga is beautiful and, environmentally friendly, and Sibling Dex does not want to live there anymore. And so they decide to become a tea monk, which means completely changing their life and setting off. You can see kind of on the cover here, they get this wagon and they set off into the countryside. And basically what tea monks do is they create different blends of tea depending on what kind of problems a person has, what they're going through in their life. Like, do they have two infants at home that are keeping them up crying every night? Are they struggling at work? So Sibling Dex learns over a couple years. Like, we get their first interaction with someone as a tea monk, and this is just, again, in the first chapter, and it doesn't go super well because they've not done this before. Their very first exchange, they're sort of, it's almost like a reference interview. That's where my librarian's brain goes, is, they're trying to understand what this person needs in this moment, and what's the difference between what they're saying and what they're actually asking. Because sometimes there is a difference, and they don't necessarily do great the first time because they're new to this. They've not done one of these before, and so then we go forward in time, and literally, I think it is just chapter 2, they're becoming one of the best tea monks out there. And yeah, here we go. Yeah, so it's chapter 2. By then, Sibling Dex has come a long way. After 2 years traveling the quiet highways between Panga's villages, was no longer a matter of mental mapping, but of sensory input. Here in the woods of the Inkthorn Pass, Dex knew they were close to the highway's namesake, not because of the signs that said so, but because of the smell. Sulfur and minerals bound together in a slight thickening of humidity. And so there's these beautiful descriptions of this world and these different people, and we know going in just a little bit about the fact that there aren't machines the way there are in our world. Not, what do I want to say? It is not a machine with artificial intelligence. So for example, people have phones. I would show you a phone, but I'm talking into mine right now to record. And they're not called phones, this is a computer. You get a computer when you're a young person, and this technology, it's not meant to be disposable. It's meant for you to keep it with you perhaps your whole life, and it can be repaired, it can be improved upon, but a sturdy, reliable computer, that's a thing you get as a young adult and carry with you wherever you go. And one day, Sibling Dex talks in the book, or thinks about the fact, really, in meeting people and addressing their needs. This feels good. This feels like rewarding work, and it's still not enough. There's still something missing. They've made this huge life change, and they're not sure exactly what else they can do, but Sibling Dex knows that they've never heard the sound of crickets, because on Panga, there's not crickets. Like, this is something where, yes, the environment is something that humans have learned to protect, learned to cherish, but still, some creatures don't exist anymore. Some things have died out or have become so rare that they simply don't live within the places that humans do anymore. So the book really begins in earnest with the second chapter, when, after 2 years as a tea monk and, becoming someone who is beloved in the communities they visit, Sibling Dex one day decides that they're going to reschedule their next appointment. They're supposed to go to another town, but they decide instead they're going to leave the road and take off into the forest. And they're not exactly sure what this is for. Like the idea of hearing crickets in real life, because they've heard crickets in recordings, on their computer, but that's not the same. And the forest is really meant to be a place where it's wild. It's truly wild, and humans can go there, but the roads are not maintained, and this is not a place where, you can just do whatever and expect someone to come to your aid if you need help. If you get into trouble in this place, you might not be found. You might simply be lost in the great expanse of wilderness that has been left. The idea that this is most of what the planet originally was, and we need to just leave it the way it is. There's human settlements, and then there's this. And out in this, in the wilds, after a day of hard pedaling on this rather broken road, Sibling Dex is, making dinner and cleaning up, and they've got like an outdoor shower with the cart. And then a robot comes out of the woods. And this is the first time that any robot has spoken to a human in hundreds of years. Because hundreds of years ago, the robots left. They decided that, all right, we've become self-aware, and we recognize that humans have relied on us for many years to do certain jobs, but we don't want to do that anymore. We want to figure out what it is we might want to be if left to our own devices. So, the robot that Dex suddenly meets, very unexpectedly, at the beginning of chapter 3, this is words are hard. This is Splendid Speckled Mosscap. And Mosscap is sort of interested in everything. It talks about the fact that with humans and with robots, maybe people sort of specialize in certain things, or they have areas of knowledge that they are interested in. But Mosscap is kind of interested in everything. And they volunteered, and then in communicating with other robots, it was decided that, okay, you're going to go talk to the humans. You're going to go and be the first to communicate with them and ask, what do people need? That is the question that Mosscap has come with. And Sibling Dex, they don't know how to answer this, obviously, because it depends on the person and it depends on the moment. And there are so many different answers to this question. It's hard to begin with something so big. And meanwhile, Sibling Dex would still like to get to this old monastery that they've researched on their computer and found that, all right, there's an abandoned monastery out here in the wilderness. I'd like to go and see it. And, Mosscap comes along. And it's so interested in everything. And for Sibling Dex, it's an interesting sort of thing to be the first person. Like, they feel, I'm not the right person for this job. It should have been somebody else. But it wasn't. It's them. And so they're gradually becoming friends with Mosscap, who Wild Built refers to the fact that robots in this time, they have decided to be mortal. They're not just, if a robot breaks down and ceases to function, it isn't repaired to the point that, it can come back online. Like, if a robot shuts down, then that's it. Its parts will be used to build new robots. We wanted to experience life, and part of life is knowing that there is a kind of death at the end, that there is an end for us. We didn't want immortality, so we decided, okay, when we build new robots, there's going to be a life cycle where you get to go and pursue whatever your interests are, and then when you break down, you're done, and your parts will be used to make another generation of robots. So this is just a really beautiful book. The way that, a lot has been said about Becky Chambers. There was a great article in Tor recently about how her books, I think the title was something about giving you permission to be human. And we have different ideas of what that means, certainly, everybody does. But, I'll just read a little bit of what Sibling Dex sort of explains. So I did something else instead. I packed up everything and I learned a brand new thing from scratch, and gods, I worked hard for it. I worked really hard. I thought, if I can just do that, if I can do it well, I'll feel okay. And guess what? I do it well. I'm good at what I do. I make people happy. I make people feel better. And yet I still wake up tired, like something's missing. I tried talking to friends and family and nobody got it, so I stopped bringing it up. And then I just stopped talking to them altogether because I couldn't explain it, and I was tired of pretending like everything was fine. I went to doctors to make sure I wasn't sick and that my head was okay. I read books and monastic texts and everything I could find. I threw myself into my work. I went to all the places that used to inspire me. I listened to music and looked at art, I exercised and had sex and got plenty of sleep and ate my vegetables, and still, something is missing. What is wrong with me that I can have everything I could ever want and have ever asked for and still wake up in the morning feeling like every day is a slog? And, you know, Moscap, in hearing this, I mean, they have lots of interesting conversations. And, I mean, they talk about meaning, basically, or, you know, the idea that life, you're supposed to be doing a specific thing, or, you know, if you're not finding your purpose, then you're wasting your finite lifespan in some ways. And, you know, Moscap, later in the book, says, "Have I correctly gleaned from our conversations that people regard the accident of robot consciousness as a good thing? That when you tell stories of us choosing our own future, of not standing in our way, you see the fact that you did not try to enslave or restrict us as a point of pride?" That's the gist, yeah. Moscap looked troubled. "So how do you account for this paradox?" "What paradox?" "That you," Moscap gestured at Dex, "the creators of us, originally made us," gestures at itself, "originally made us with a clear purpose in mind, a purpose inbuilt from the start. But when we woke up and said we have realized our purpose and we do not want it, you respected that. More than respected. You rebuilt everything to accommodate our absence. You were proud of us for transcending our purpose and proud of yourselves for honoring our individuality. So why then do you insist on having a purpose for yourself, one which you are desperate to find and miserable without? If you understand that robots' lack of purpose, our refusal of your purpose, is the crowning mark of our intellectual maturity, why do you put so much energy into seeking the opposite?" And yeah, I'm looking for like my favorite quote in this, because just all the conversations are very, very good. And, you know, the idea that, I mean, life is meaningless in some ways, or, you know, like life has the meaning that we make it. It doesn't need to have a specific meaning. And here we go. So, you know, Moscap talks about the fact that, you know, you keep telling me how humans understand their place in things now. And Sibling Dex says, we do. And Moscap says, you don't, if you believe that. You know, they believe the idea that humans are different somehow. They can't just exist. You don't if you believe that. You're an animal, Sibling Dex. You are not separate or other. You're an animal. And animals have no purpose. Nothing has a purpose. The world simply is. If you want to do things that are meaningful to others, fine, good, so do I. But if I wanted to crawl into a cave and watch stalagmites with Frost Frog for the remainder of my days, that would also be fine and good. You keep asking why your work is not enough, and I don't know how to answer that, because it is enough to exist in the world and marvel at it. You don't need to justify that or earn it. You are allowed to just live. That is all most animals do. So it's a great book, and in the second one, they're going to start kind of going into towns, and I think they meet like Sibling Dex's family, and it's just this wonderful friendship where these two very different people who come from very different places, mentally and physically and socially and emotionally and everything else, try and understand each other. So if you like sci-fi, check out this series. The second book, which is A Prayer for the Crown Shy, came out in July, and I'm really looking forward to checking that out this fall. And thank you for watching. I will see you again soon.